When my partner asked whether she could have an encounter with someone else just once, it deeply distressed me. I found myself shocked and at a loss for words. How could she suggest such an idea after 21 years of marriage? The only thing I knew was that a crucial decision lay before me. Maybe I should have seen it coming. Everything appeared perfect, especially in that moment. It was a Friday evening in the summertime. I was enjoying a cold drink while watching a baseball game between the Cubs and the Cardinals. My dog Rice was beside me, sleeping, only moving a bit when I cheered for the Cubs. The only sounds in the house were from the TV and my occasional loud cheers. My wife Tracy, to whom I had been married for 21 years, was visiting a friend nearby. My 18-year-old son and 17-year-old daughter were out for the night with their friends, leaving just me, the dog, the Cubs game on the television, and some Corona beers in the refrigerator, with a few limes I had grabbed on a whim earlier. I don't usually bother with limes, but tonight I decided to treat myself since I was alone. I heard the front door open and close, assuming Tracy was back from her visit with her friend Lisa. I noticed movement at the front of the house but didn't receive the usual greeting, which was strange. My attention then returned to the game when the Cubs manager, David Ross, made a controversial move, provoking my ire and startling the dog again. Tracy took at least 5 minutes before she finally came into the living room. She seemed pensive, perhaps anxious. Rather than coming over for our customary hug, she stopped at the end of the couch close to my chair. While I kept an eye on her, I kept the other on the game. "Do you have a moment to talk, Bob?" she asked. Her voice almost drowned out by the TV. Her request caught all my attention. "Of course, honey," I replied. I could see a light sweat on her forehead, and her breathing was erratic. I feared someone we knew was ill or had passed away. "Could you turn off the TV, Bob?" she asked, her fingers fidgeting. Turning off the TV during a Cubs game was a significant ask. It had to be something serious, beyond illness or death. A sense of dread filled me. I grabbed the remote and turned off the TV. "What's the matter, love? You look troubled." "Is someone sick?" I inquired. No, nobody's dead," she quickly assured me. "It's just that what I need to talk about is very important to me, and I need your full attention." I nodded, filled with anxious thoughts. Our eyes locked for an extended period. I could see fear and maybe even anger in her eyes. "You understand I love you completely and I would never betray you or be unfaithful with another man, right?" This question was unexpected. Suddenly, the dinner I had earlier and the 2 beers I had during the game felt like they were on the verge of reappearing on the living room carpet. I nodded again without saying a word. "I'm 45, Bob," she continued. "Besides you, I've only been with one other man my whole life. People still find me appealing. My friends even joke about me being a MILF. I want to be with another man just once, to feel the excitement of someone different, someone new, before we settle into our older years together." I was stunned. I couldn't move for what seemed like an eternity. It felt like there was a freight train roaring past my head. "No, absolutely not," I exclaimed, jumping up from my chair. "This won't happen while I'm alive." Her eyes widened as I began to pace. It was like being in the worst dream. Perhaps I had fallen asleep in my chair, and this was just a nightmare. "This isn't about us, Bob. It's about me, about my desires, which go beyond you and our family," she explained calmly, her voice gaining strength with each word. "I consider myself a loyal wife and mother over the years. Our family has always been my priority. Yet this time I desire to do something solely for me. I yearn to embody a confident and beautiful woman in full command of her existence." "Do you feel unattractive around me?" I asked, noting the weakness in my own voice. "My love for you is voiced endlessly. Surely I make you feel desired. My desire for you is evident, and I hardly keep it a secret." "Yes, you do, and I appreciate it, yet this involves more. My self-worth still depends on the validation from men other than you, Bob. It feels good to be noticed by other men. The idea that another man might find me attractive excites me. Don't you feel good when a woman looks your way or flirts with you? I'm no exception. I enjoy being noticed and desired, and now, more than ever, I crave the excitement of a date, to be dined and pursued, and to be desired by a man, if only for a night. Not for love, but for desire. A single night, then back to you, to our life of commitment as wife and mother." "To me, you're not just a loyal wife and mother, Blondie," I replied. "You're everything to me. The mere thought of you with someone else is intolerable. I can't permit you to do this." "You claim your love for me. Why not prove it by agreeing to this? It's a big ask, I know, but it would mean everything if you'd let me, she insisted. No, it would be completely irrational of me to consent. If you truly cared about me, this proposition would never have come up, I countered. Have I not been a dedicated husband and father? Does that not count for anything? But you've had more experiences than me before we married. I just want a level playing field, she argued. Actually, we never delved into our pasts before marriage. What we did discuss was our dedication to each other henceforth. And just so you know, I've been intimate with only 4 women, you included, so it's not like I've had a plethora of partners, I explained. Oh, I assumed you were more experienced than me, she admitted. You always seemed so knowledgeable. I've made it my mission to learn. My goal is to satisfy you in every aspect I stated. So you're still totally against it, she probed. Not only am I opposed, but I will also be seeking legal counsel first thing Monday to start divorce proceedings, I declared, noticing her shock. But she faltered. Your asking tells me how serious you are about this. It suggests you're unlikely to drop the idea, I said. It means you might proceed with it secretly. No, I swear I haven't been with anyone else. I promised not to betray you, and I've honored that promise, she begged. Now that you've voiced this wish, you may not view it as betrayal since you've been upfront, I remarked, holding her gaze. Her avoidance of my look conveyed all I needed to know. Are you truly prepared to end our family, even though I've taken no action yet, she inquired, her voice breaking. Your bravery in suggesting this indicates it's been on your mind, suggesting you might already have someone in mind, maybe even plotting lunches, dinners. You've already disappointed me emotionally. Who is he? I pressed. I hadn't thought of anyone specific, she answered, her eyes fixed on a point behind me. A silence of about 15 seconds followed as I observed her closely. She blushed under my scrutinizing gaze, my skepticism evident. There's no need for you to know, Bob, she murmured. Well, strictly speaking, no, but my curiosity stems from wanting to know who could disrupt what I thought was a stable marriage. You can either tell me, or I can ask all of your friends, your boss, and everyone at your job, I warned her. She looked utterly shocked. You wouldn't, she began. Wouldn't I? What's left for me to lose? My life is already turned upside down, my marriage shattered. A little more embarrassment means little to me now. And what about my embarrassment? She exclaimed. I simply shrugged, barely hiding my smirk. Your name, I asked with determination. Dan. Dan Wilson, she whispered back. Bob, please don't hurt him, she pleaded. Promises are something I can't give, I declared. Then I grabbed the remote and continued watching the match. She sighed, holding back her tears, stood up from the couch and walked upstairs to our bedroom. I kept my eyes on the Cubs game, though my mind was elsewhere. I don't remember what was on television after that, but I stayed seated there for at least another couple of hours. Despite trying to conceal my emotions from my wife, deep down I was truly devastated. I had no inkling she was contemplating being unfaithful. Looking back, I realized there were signs of her unhappiness with me or our shared life. Tracy had grown more withdrawn over the past 3 months, distancing herself not just from me, but also from our kids. It was our daughter, Cher, who first brought it up, wondering if Tracy and I were having some issues. Our connection seemed to be fading. I noticed our once bi-weekly intimate encounters had dwindled to once every 2 weeks. Despite my attempts to understand, I started to think she might be experiencing some personal changes. Her recent behavior of taking phone calls outside and frequent late-night texting intrigued me. When I asked, she blamed it on Lisa, claiming she was dealing with marriage problems with Jerry. This caught my attention since Jerry and Lisa were our close neighbors, living just a few houses away, and I was unaware of their problems. Over the weekend, I pondered over my choices deeply. I let Tracy know of my intention to quickly pursue a divorce. However, before making such a decision, it was essential to thoroughly consider every aspect of our marital and family life. It wasn't difficult to see why Tracy could attract other men. I met her at 21, and now at 45 she had gained only 10 lbs after 2 pregnancies. Her voluptuous figure and firm rear, combined with her youthful appearance, made her look about 35. I often wondered how I managed to be with Tracy, as she was clearly out of my league. Though not unattractive myself, at 5 and 175 lbs, guys like me didn't typically end up with someone who was homecoming queen just a few years prior in high school. We met in an astronomy class at Purdue University in our junior year. I enrolled for fun, while Tracy needed it for a science credit. Being a bit of a geek, I was more than willing to help her through, knowing science wasn't her forte. As the semester drew to a close, we ended up studying in my dorm room. Out of nowhere, Tracy kissed me deeply, and I kissed her back with the same intensity. "I was convinced you were gay for most of the semester," Tracy remarked after we caught our breath. "No matter what I did, you seemed uninterested." "I was certainly interested, just clueless that you felt the same." "I was really trying my best not to stare at you," I replied. From that point, we started seeing each other exclusively. My knowledge in intimate matters was limited, but it seemed crucial to her. She never complained and appeared to enjoy our time together, likely because I had extensively researched the topic. While my friends were watching porn, I was analyzing the techniques, which Tracy appreciated from the start. During our second intimate encounter, I impressed her with something I mentioned. After coming to a few minutes later, all she managed to say was, "I love you, Bob." 2 years after graduating, we got married, and 3 years on, we had our son, followed by our daughter. We were financially secure. I was in it, and she worked in banking, returning to the job after our youngest started school. Our son was gearing up for college at Ohio State soon, and our daughter was about to enter her last year of high school. We were nearing the stage of being empty nesters in just a couple of years. We had been planning our future, including travels, for the last few months. I had adored this woman for almost 23 years. On one hand, ending everything because she wanted to explore outside our marriage felt extremely severe, but on the other, her even suggesting it was indicative of a significant issue. I wasn't naive. I realized that if she was desperate enough to seek permission for infidelity, she could choose to do it in secret, especially after confessing to me and not seeing it as infidelity, whereas I did. Moreover, there was the issue of her already being emotionally involved with Dan Wilson and planning this physical infidelity together. Could I forgive that? I immediately contacted a divorce specialist lawyer that next Monday morning and set up a meeting for the coming Thursday afternoon. In the meantime, Tracy attempted to convince me not to go through with the divorce. "We haven't done anything, Bob. We're not going to," Tracy pleaded. "Is it because you genuinely don't want a divorce, or because you realize it's wrong?" I asked. She didn't meet my gaze and remained silent. "You're still holding out hope that I'll change my mind and allow it." Right, her hopeful expression sadly acknowledged our impending futures. 1 week after seeing my lawyer, I had Tracy served with the divorce papers. Our state's no-fault divorce statutes and our similar incomes simplified the financial negotiations. With our kids nearing adulthood, custody arrangements were to be made gradually, with the non-custodial parent providing child support for 1 year. The plan was to sell our house and divide the profits, ending our 21-year marriage. However, the proceedings were not as smooth as anticipated. Tracy engaged a skilled attorney who persuaded the judge to mandate 4 therapy sessions, with the possibility of more if needed. The therapist, a woman in her mid-30s, agreed with Tracy and my children's perspective. If my wife hadn't physically cheated, why did I feel a divorce was necessary? I shared with the therapist the same perspective I had explained to Tracy and my kids. I saw her request for an affair as a breach of our marriage vows. Therefore, I felt I could no longer trust her as my spouse, despite possibly still having feelings for her. I couldn't remain married to someone I didn't trust. "But I'll never think of doing such a thing again, Bob. I just need you," she pleaded repeatedly across the first 2 therapy sessions. "You're firm in your decision, aren't you, Mr. Rasmussen?" "It's clear in your resolve," the therapist noted at the end of the second session. "I will not prolong this issue and will advise the judge to let the divorce go ahead unimpeded. Although my opinion doesn't matter, I'll give it anyway. I believe you're making a grave mistake. Your wife hasn't committed physical betrayal, thus marital counseling might be effective in saving your lengthy marriage. Your wife seems ready to do anything to keep your marriage and family together. This made me uncomfortable. I have deep affection for Tracy." "It wasn't a light decision to dissolve our marriage, Dr. Baker. We have different views. You call it a compromise, but I don't see Tracy's promise to stay loyal as such. It's about honoring the vows we made 21 years ago, vows she was ready to break with another person," I detailed. When Tracy told her parents about our divorce, they were furious. The day after she told them, my mother-in-law called me, launching into insults for 15 minutes straight as I answered. My father-in-law, usually the peacemaker, took the phone during her rant. She hasn't actually cheated on you, and you're ending it after 21 years. Are you out of your mind, Bob? He protested. I laid out the events for him, and through it all, I heard his subdued responses. He occasionally interjected with a quiet "really" before letting me continue. By the end of our talk, he sounded disheartened, issuing a final apology before gently hanging up. The following week, I relocated to a nearby 2-bedroom apartment, while my daughter chose to stay with my wife until she started college the next fall. Despite understanding my reasons for leaving their mother, both kids were saddened by me, though I thought the extra room might be useful in case either child wanted to visit. A few days after I settled into my new residence, I engaged in a congenial phone exchange with my neighbor Jerry. During our conversation, I pointed out how his wife Lisa seemed entangled in my spouse's dealings with Dan Wilson, and how Tracy had insinuated issues between Jerry and Lisa. I made it clear to Jerry that I didn't suspect him of causing my marital discord, but it looked like Lisa might have played a role, considering her bond with Tracy. This led me to wonder if she was concocting plans with another man. "Oh no," Jerry exclaimed in our conversation. "Are you implying that I could be in trouble too? Can your lawyer offer a group discount? The rise of social media brings both perks and drawbacks." A personal advantage for me was being able to gather extensive information about Dan Wilson without the need for a private investigator, which significantly cut my expenses. Wilson, a colleague of Lisa's, had moved to our adjacent office from Cleveland roughly 6 months prior to my matrimonial issues emerging. He had a desirable companion who was still seeking employment in our area, leading him to frequently return to see her on weekends. It appeared he was organizing his visits to ensure a warm welcome in both places. I questioned whether Tracy was aware of Wilson's companion. All of this was in the past now, except for the phone call I made to Wilson's companion after hearing from various sources that Dan's engagement had been annulled. His companion revealed he was now free to devote all his time to his old flame. Did I mention that his companion was the progeny of a wealthy family? 2 weeks before my divorce was finalized was also my 22nd anniversary with Tracy. I couldn't overlook the grief of what I was losing, but as I dined on my Swanson TV dinner, I became increasingly sure that I was making the right decision for myself. Remaining married would mean living with constant uncertainty and searching for proof of her infidelity. I was certain she would find a way to trick me eventually, as she loathed losing, and would take not getting her way as a challenge to overcome. I sipped some single malt and headed to bed by 10 p.m., silently wishing myself a happy anniversary. Around 1 a.m. my phone rang, and it was my soon-to-be ex-wife calling. Initially, I considered sending the call to voicemail, but decided to answer since I was awake anyway. She was moaning and breathing heavily, with clear sounds of passion in the background. I knew those sounds well enough to be certain she wasn't pretending. Despite my urge to hang up, I stayed still, listening to Tracy encouraging her partner, probably Wilson. I remained on the call for an extra 2 minutes, enough to hear them finish. I wished for a phone with buttons, just to make the hang-up sound clear. At that point, any doubt about the divorce dissipated. Following my attorney's advice, I had started recording all my interactions with my wife. Feeling agitated, I called my in-laws. When my father-in-law answered, I played the 3-minute recording for him and then hung up. I was sure I wouldn't have to endure such painful exchanges in the future. Differing from my wife, I avoided seeking solace in someone else's presence until after the divorce was finalized. It was over a year before I engaged intimately with another woman. Indeed, my social life suffered. It had been 24 years since my last date, and without any intention to date again soon, I hadn't kept up with the changes in dating norms. This turned out to be a grave mistake, as the dating landscape had evolved quickly, leaving me behind. I recognized part of my hesitation to date stemmed from fear I was wary of facing another emotional hurt. I had adored Tracy deeply, and her deceit had blindsided me, coming without any warning. One significant change I observed in the dating world since my last foray was the shift in women's attitudes. Previously, dating tended to be a unidirectional affair. Men took the initiative in selecting who to court, asking them out, planning the date, and covering the costs. Presently, it seems that women are taking a more assertive stance in the realm of dating, often being the ones to initiate contact and clearly stating their preferences for how the date should unfold. They are also increasingly contributing to the costs associated with the outing. At certain moments I felt somewhat out of step, trying to adapt to the changing norms of contemporary dating. Venturing back into the dating scene has revealed to me that the conduct I witnessed from Tracy is not an isolated case. With this surge in empowerment, today's women in the dating sphere tend to adopt a more self-focused attitude, putting their own desires first, occasionally at their partner's expense. This tendency towards prioritizing oneself is a phenomenon I've frequently encountered and represents a significant shift that I've observed directly. Regarding the aspect of physical intimacy with a woman in her 20s, I had no issues. The initial experience was quite intense, leading me to worry that I might have pushed myself too hard, but after adjusting to the physical demands, I found the experience to be exceptionally fulfilling. While I have no desire to belittle Tracy's abilities, at 45, she did not possess the energy and nimbleness associated with younger women. Although my physical endurance isn't what it used to be, I made up for this with my proficiency in oral and manual skills, which stood out as my strong points. However, my interests spanned beyond just younger individuals. Having been involved with women aged between 25 and 55, I see myself as open to various ages, yet I often gravitated towards those closer to my age, feeling a deeper level of ease with them. Concluding a strenuous week, I finished a meeting with a new client on the opposite end of town. Still clad in my work clothes, I decided to make a quick stop at a chic hotel bar. Perched on a tall stool, I requested a shot of Glenmorangie single malt, arriving there at about 7 p.m. About an hour later, a spirited group of women celebrating a bachelorette party came in and took over some reserved tables. Comprising roughly 15 members, they radiated enthusiasm. My curiosity led me to linger longer than I had planned, so I remained to watch them as I ordered my dinner at the bar. The bride-to-be, a delightful young lady in her mid-20s with cascading light brown hair and expressive brown eyes, naturally drew everyone's gaze. My affinity for long hair meant she especially caught my eye, and I watched her for a bit before shifting my attention to the rest of the group. My focus then shifted to another woman, likely in her 40s, who seemed to be in charge of the party, watching over both the more and less restrained younger attendees. She appeared slightly uneasy in her black skirt, which had crept up her legs as she sat, initially trying without success to adjust it. An internal smile formed as I noticed her distinctly appealing legs. She also had a prominent bust, not entirely hidden by her tight lavender silk blouse with a modest neckline that revealed a glimpse of her seldom-seen ivory skin. Her attire, possibly selected by one of the younger attendees, seemed more suited to a younger demographic, a choice I inwardly commended. The group was clearly having a great time, engrossed in laughter, drinks and snacks, as a band started playing. A few women got up to dance, a spectacle that appeared to motivate other men in the bar to either join in or approach those seated, with the exception of the overseeing woman. After watching for around 10 minutes and noting that no one had approached her, I deemed it suitable to introduce myself. With her shoulder-length dark brown hair and bright green eyes, she brought to mind a prime Jacqueline Bess. It was noteworthy that she wasn't wearing a wedding ring. She blushed a lovely shade of pink when I invited her to dance. Though hesitant at first, she agreed following a little encouragement from the younger women nearby, standing to fix her skirt before taking my hand. The first 2 dances were lively, and I silently thanked my ex-spouse for convincing me to take dance lessons. The next dance was slower, and it came as a pleasant surprise when she moved closer to me. Her hair gave off the scent of white shoulders, captivating me since it's rare among younger women. As we moved gracefully across the dance floor, conversation began to flow between us. She introduced herself as Kathleen Franks, the aunt of the bride and the protector of the group. I shared my admiration for the evening's dances, and as Kathleen was about to leave the dance floor after our smooth dance, I caught her hand, proposing we move to the bar together. She hesitated at first, citing her duty to look after her girls, but I assured her that she could keep an eye on them from our position at the bar. From there, we observed the younger women and our dialogue continued. She disclosed her age as 48 and the fact that she went through a divorce after a 15-year marriage. Kathleen opened up about her ex-husband, who was successful and had remarried a 27-year-old woman 3 years ago. She mentioned that the dress she was wearing was chosen by her niece, the bride, and admitted it felt a bit too young for her usual style. I reassured her that the dress looked great on her, also making a point to praise her shoes. I've learned that comments on shoes are often well received by women. When she asked, "Do you think this outfit suits me?" with a sense of vulnerability, I earnestly replied, "You look amazing." My appreciation for her choice of attire deepened when I noticed her happy response. Our exchange lasted about 15 minutes, during which she remarked on my absence of a wedding ring and asked about it. She was surprised to hear that my ex-wife hadn't been physically unfaithful but had emotionally drifted away and was on the brink of a physical affair, which had dissolved my trust in her. Declaring love for someone while desiring another sexually is not right, I stated. I understand, she acknowledged, recognizing that we all have our boundaries. She went back to sit with the bridal party after a while, yet she was receptive to another dance invitation from me around 30 minutes later. Post-dance, she guided me to where the women, and now several men, were congregated. From my perspective, the night was unfolding well, despite the lively behavior of some of the younger guests. Kathy took me by surprise by asking me to join her at a wedding happening in 2 weeks. I had intended to attend alone, but she persuaded me that my company would make the occasion more enjoyable for her, given my acquaintance with several guests. She voiced her reluctance to go by herself, fearing it might seem pathetic. Keen to spare her that feeling, I was happy to agree to accompany her. "Let me know the color of your dress, and I'll select a matching suit," I suggested. She replied with a quick kiss, prompting cheers from some people at the table. I grinned, and Kathy blushed once more. This interaction was becoming quite enjoyable. When not dancing, I stayed close to Kathy, watching over the bachelorettes, a few of whom seemed to overindulge in their drinking. As a dad to a teenage daughter, I felt a natural urge to protect. My attention was captured when I saw a young man escorting one of the women towards the restroom. I excused myself and followed them quietly, intercepting the young man just as he was about to take her into the men's restroom. He looked at me with contempt, caught off guard by an older, formally dressed man. At 5 and 175 lbs, I'm not typically intimidating at first glance, but I pride myself on staying fit, a remnant from overcoming various adversities in my youth. Sometimes readiness for unexpected situations is crucial for doing what's right, such as protecting a young woman from a potentially harmful situation with a young man. I wished for someone to do the same for my daughter if she were ever in danger. "Let go of my hand and back off, old man," he defiantly told me, insisting she could take care of herself if she wanted to. I let go of his hand, but with my other I firmly took hold of his head and knocked it against the wall beside the door, producing a loud bang that seemed to shock him. Suddenly his confidence waned, and he let the woman go, showing no more inclination to fight. A hush fell over the onlookers as the incident unfolded. As I escorted Alicia back to the bachelorette party, Katie and our group came forward, took the woman by her hands, and guided her back to our table. I then stood face to face with the restaurant manager and some employees, bracing for a potential reprimand. To my surprise, the manager thanked me for stepping in to help the young woman. The authorities were alerted, and the suspect was currently in custody. It was likely they would request my contact details and a description of what occurred, yet he reassured me there was nothing to worry about. He also mentioned that my beverages for the evening would be complimentary. "Your help is greatly appreciated," he mentioned. "What an experience." Wanda, the bride-to-be, commented as I got back to our group. "Appreciating you for keeping an eye out, not just for Aunt Kathy." "How did you catch that?" inquired Kathy. I ought to have been more attentive, yet it completely slipped by me. I'm burdened with guilt. Don't beat yourself up over it. Monitoring 14 ladies in a nightclub is tough, unless you're trained in security or you're a dad. Fathers, or at least a good number of us, seem to acquire what I call dad vision. Our conversation and laughter with the ladies at our table went on until they opted to move on to another spot for the rest of the evening. After wishing them a pleasant night and sharing a soft kiss with Kathy, I added her number to my contacts. "Seek a secluded area," quipped a lady from the group, sparking laughter all around. As the ladies left the eatery, I discreetly tasted Kathy's lipstick, running my tongue over my lips. Heading back to my initial spot at the bar with my beverage in hand, the bartender remarked, "Looks like things worked out for you." "Who would have thought?" with a smile. I said, "A bachelorette bash. Let's toast with another round to my fortunate turn before I leave." I left the bartender, now a friend, a hefty $120 tip for the night. Kathy opted for a pale blue gown for the wedding, and I went with a navy blue suit with pinstripes, thinking it apt for the occasion. We looked quite the pair, receiving compliments from her family members. At the wedding, numerous guests came up to thank me for protecting Alicia, as if the bride had been lauding my heroic deed for the last 2 weeks. You exhibit both courage and charm, a rare mix. Kathy's sister, Donna Fulham, the bride's mother, complimented me as she introduced herself before the ceremony began. She expressed her gratitude for my earlier assistance with the group and for being the type of man Kathy respects. Kathy's 24-year-old daughter, Marissa, and her betrothed, Ben, were also there. Upon our introduction, Marissa remarked, "Thankfully, one of my parents isn't dating someone my age." She warned me her dad might not take kindly to me upon meeting. However, by the event's conclusion, I was convinced Kathy and I had a promising future. A month later, I introduced her to my kids. While my son immediately warmed up to her, my daughter was somewhat reserved, harboring resentment over my divorce from her mum, despite no infidelity on her part. Yet my son, who was in a committed relationship, understood the circumstances. One evening, we delved into a heartfelt conversation about the importance of loyalty to each of us. A few years down the line, Kathy became my wife, and we eventually retired. For our 25th anniversary, we indulged in an Alaskan cruise. With the aid of a daily routine and some personal products, we maintained intimacy every morning before starting our day, focusing on strengthening our emotional connection rather than the physical aspect alone. Our 3 children have since married and are thriving, blessing us with 6 grandchildren. Since the divorce, I've had limited interactions with my ex-wife, mainly during our kids' weddings and holiday gatherings. She has since remarried and faced another divorce, often blaming her challenges on me. She persistently informs our children about my fidelity during our marriage. Some people struggle with the concept of moving forward. In a different narrative, my spouse betrayed me with a man younger than me and remains in contact with him. This ordeal is relatively new, but it unfolded as we were on our way home. My spouse, who is 49, got a text notification. The vehicle announced, "You have a message from George," being 54. I questioned who George was. She declined to elaborate and wouldn't show me the message, yet admitted to an extramarital relationship. She left, pronouncing our marriage finished, leaving me devastated. She came back, and we discussed. She was unsure about our joint future, yet expressed a readiness to try mending our bond. That same day, she sought my assistance in blocking George's contact. Nevertheless, she forgot her handbag in her vehicle and briefly went outside. I found out she was still communicating with George. Upon confronting her, she replied that she had blocked his messages, not that she would stop all forms of communication with him. She became angry and exited. Some time back, she requested that I activate location sharing on Google Maps on her mobile for safety purposes. Although I didn't keep tabs on her, after divulging our predicament to my relatives and our child, she felt dishonored and asked for a separation. Still, we decided to live together since moving out wasn't financially viable for either of us. Lately, she showed openness to seeking therapy but insists on keeping her bond with George, asserting he's her only companion. I expressed my apathy and decided to see if she persists in her dealings with George, prepared to terminate our marriage if so. Nonetheless, we are bound to cohabitate until August. She has barely known George for less than a fortnight, yet their connection has deepened, which to me seems improper. Expressing my feelings has become increasingly difficult. It's been ages since I last cried, yet nowadays tears come easily, and I'm engulfed by sensations of despondency, embarrassment, and isolation. My trust in her, or anyone for that matter, has vanished. The idea of taking my own life has entered my thoughts, but the notion of her and George gaining from my demise through my insurance is intolerable. I'm anxiously awaiting our therapy appointment to convey my emotions. I still harbor love for my spouse and have conveyed my readiness to forgive, provided she ends her folly with George. She has not yet given a definitive answer. Thank you for joining us in this episode of Infidelity Tales. If you found these narratives moving, kindly subscribe and hit the notification bell to not miss out on the forthcoming saga of emotional twists in relationships. Your endorsement means the world to us, and we are eager to bring more gripping tales to you. Until the next time, bear in mind that each relationship narrates a distinct tale worthy of being told. Catch you later.